So I just want to reflect on what's happened this year and what I think may well happen in the new year, in the upcoming year. And of course, if we go back to 2023, everything changed on October the 7th. Now, people may say, and a lot of people have said this, what's something happening in the Middle East, in Israel? What has that got to do with us in the United Kingdom? We've got our own things to worry about. Well, very quickly after the 7th of October, the problems in the United Kingdom started coming to a head. Now, they haven't fully come to a head yet, but they started coming to a head. And what we saw was thousands of people taking to the street, not to protest against this vile, disgusting jihadist organisation that completely unprovoked stormed into Israel and slaughtered men, women and children. Some of the footage that came up immediately afterwards, I don't even know where people got it from, but I was sent footage of the Hamas terrorists murdering people in the most brutal fashion. Not going to describe it. One thing I will describe, because this was the most disturbing clip I saw, was a woman in the back of a car, and it appeared that she was being raped and strangled at the same time. Sitting next to the woman were two little children, no older than 7 or 8, terrified, screaming. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know what happened to the woman. Some of the most disturbing footage I've ever seen in my life. It was absolutely disgusting. And those jihadists did that to provoke a response. And Israel could do nothing else than what it's doing now, going into the Gaza Strip and killing the Hamas terrorists and their colleagues that carried out that genocidal attack and threatened to do more and more and more. And sadly, innocent people get killed when there's war. But to accuse Israel of war crimes and to somehow make Israel the villain of the peace is just beyond credulity to me. It's incredible that people are doing that. So that was October the 7th. Since then, there's been a few street protests by patriots, but there have been protests every week by thousands upon thousands of Islamists throughout Western Europe, throughout the United States, throughout the United Kingdom. Not just jihadists, not just Islamists, but the usual suspects, the lefties, the communists, the Socialist Workers' Party, the people that love identity politics, the people that revel in the transgender movement. In other words, everything that's bad about our society and about our country. And I'm just about sick of hearing about trans rights. I'm just about sick of hearing about how dreadful white people are. I'm just about sick of hearing about how terrible Israel is. In fact, I'm not just about sick, I'm totally sick and disgusted with it. And what these people are doing, they're trying to drive a massive wedge between all the different areas of our society and different cultures. But the most disturbing thing is the mass mobilization of thousands upon thousands of Muslims who are supporting jihad. They're supporting Hamas. They're supporting a terrorist organization. That is a fact. That is a fact. When they're chanting that they want an intifada from London to Gaza, that's what they're talking about. When they're calling, saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, we know what that means. From the Jordan River to the Mediterranean, Palestine will be free. Of course, Palestine's never even existed in that land. It's a myth in the minds of the left and the Islamists. Israel is there and Israel's there to stay. But putting all that aside, let's get back to the United Kingdom, because that's what this is about. It's about the United Kingdom. What's happening right here in the United Kingdom? So first of all, we have thousands of Islamists on the streets. When patriots have the temerity to go out and protest and say, enough's enough. You're not going to go to our war memorial and armistice and say, we're going to put thousands of boots on the ground. And we did. And it worked. Nobody came anywhere near the war memorial. Were there some scuffles with the police? Yes. Were the police to blame for a lot of that? Yes. There's a massive difference, a massive disparity between the way working class British men are policed, and let's be honest, mostly white working class British men are policed, and the jihadists and the leftists and Just Stop Oil, and you can go on and on. If you're a working class lad and you go on a demo and you get a little bit leery, or something goes a bit out of hand, or something goes a bit wrong, you're looking at 4 or 5 years in prison. If you're one of these lefties, you can do what the hell you want. If you're a jihadist, you can walk around with placards calling for genocide and you seem to get away with it. And then, of course, we had the when jihad is not jihad. We had bearded men calling for war against Israel, calling for jihad, and you had Islamists in the ops room of the Metropolitan Police telling the Met commanders that they didn't actually mean they wanted a global holy war against everybody that wasn't a Muslim. And of course, the Met, being the Met, believed them. Our security system is compromised at the highest level. It's compromised by liberal leftists that have been educated out of intelligence. They are absolutely brain-dead morons, and they are running the security establishment. And I don't believe it's because they're great at their job that we haven't had attacks. I think it's we've been lucky. We've been lucky. And I was talking to a friend who knows about these things, about the protests, talking about Tommy as well. And I said to him, I said, why do you think Tommy's targeted? And he paused for a minute. He says, look, it's Northern Ireland, lad. He says, look, Tommy is targeted because he represents something. Not because of what he's done, not because of who he is. It's because of what he represents. And that, I believe, is a very, very good analysis of Tommy. Not as a person. You take the person out of the way. And I've talked about this in videos before. We're talking about the myth, the legend of Tommy Robinson. And that's why the state come down, and that's why the state destroy him. And every time, if you're a working class Brit, every time that Tommy is persecuted, you are being persecuted as well. I remember when he got arrested in May 2018, and well, let's just say it was a sudden baptism of fire for a lot of us, and we did a flash demo at Speaker's Corner, organised it very quickly, got a few hundred people there. It was good, and we said the famous words, "I am Spartacus," and everybody knew what we meant. I am Tommy. And the reality is we all must identify like that. We all must say that when Tommy has been persecuted, the whole of the British working class, irrespective of race, the genuine British working class, patriotic Brits of all backgrounds that love the country, want to make the country work, when he's been persecuted, you're being persecuted. Because they'll come for him today, they get him in prison, they'll come for me, they'll come for others tomorrow. That's the way it is. That's the way this state works. So what of the future? Well, the friend I was speaking to, he's very concerned about these marches, about these jihadist, Hamas terror supporting marches. And he said this, he says, look, he said, very soon, the people going on these marches will realise that they're not going to achieve anything. And he said this to me, he said, they're not like Just Stop Oil. They're not going to glue themselves to the pavement. They're not going to go into the National Gallery or whatever it is and start smashing up pieces of art. He said, these people will strap a bomb to their chests or take a knife and tape it around their hand and go into a pub and start stabbing people. The same as they did in 2017. Except there's more of them. There's way more of them. We're talking tens of thousands of people are getting radicalised at the minute. Some of them new converts. We've seen this lunacy of these women donning a burqa in Australia and saying they're becoming Muslims to come out in solidarity with the people of Gaza. Well, good luck on that one. Because what a lot of these women obviously don't realize, they've obviously never read the Quran. They obviously know nothing about Islamic theology. They obviously know nothing about Islam. They don't realize that they're going into Hotel California. Once you get in, you can't get out. You're stuck there. So in the new year, as this war goes on, and it will have to go on if Israel are to win, they're getting attacked from the north. If they stop in Gaza, they'll get attacked from Gaza again. They can't trust their neighbours. They are in a very difficult situation. They will have to prosecute restore. They can't trust the Americans. They can't trust the British. One of the most shameful things is the way that the British and the Americans, the French, are throwing Israel under the bus. Israel will stand alone against its enemies. It's done it before, it'll do it again. And with God's grace, it will win. But the way the Americans, the Brits and the French are now talking about what Israel's doing is shameful. Because what they're doing, when they say, stop the bombing, stop the targeted strikes because they're killing too many civilians, what they're saying is, tell you what, let your soldiers die, but save these people in Gaza. Because the people in Gaza are more valuable than your soldiers. That's a shameful thing for any country to say to another friendly country. And of course, we had it in the Americans during the Troubles, with the Americans during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. They were talking out both sides of the mouth the whole time. Anyway, that's another story. So in the new year, the war will drag on. The war in Ukraine will be going on as well. Britain's still pumping weapons into the war in Ukraine. And I'm not saying whether that's good or bad. It's happening. So there'll probably be some sort of Russian response in the new year after the ship was hit with a British-made missile. And then, of course, if we carry on supplying the Israelis, which we should, with the weapons and the tools of war that they need to win the war, there will be attacks in the United Kingdom. And they're already lining us up for this. They're already saying it's our tax money that's paying for the war in Israel. That's what the jihadists are saying. And that's the ideology they use to justify. They use that ideology to justify terrorist attacks against innocent civilians, because they say, you're all taxpayers, you're all voters, you voted these people in, you're responsible for their policy, therefore you're a legitimate target. That is the logic of jihadists. So in the new year, the marches will continue. Will there be a counter protest movement against the marches? I would say there should be. I'm not living in England, so it's very difficult. If I come across to England, it costs me a lot of money. If I was living in London, I would be doing demos every week. And if you're living in London, you're not doing demos every week, I'm going to just stick it on you and say, hang your head in shame. Why aren't you doing it? Is football more important? Just put it out there. It's not, because somebody needs to take a stand against these jihadists. Veterans, where are you? You know, where are the veterans? Where are army veterans? I'm an army veteran. You know, why aren't you standing against this? What's going on in the country at the minute is the biggest threat to the United Kingdom since the Second World War. It's got worse and worse and worse since 2017. Freedom of speech has been absolutely destroyed by the social media platforms and now by the government with the internet harms legislation. And when Labour get in, it's going to get even worse. So in the new year, look forward to internet harms kicking in. Social media platforms clamping down even more than they ever did. Silencing people even more than they ever did. There's a little glimmer of light with Twitter at the minute. But believe you me, that could be snuffed out in an instant. They're going to go after Elon Musk this year. They're going to go after anyone that doesn't agree with them. And like I said before, we've got these three main threats. We've got the globalists, the Sunaks, the Macrons, the technocrats, the ones that want to tell us how to live our lives and want to enforce their hypocritical policies on us, their net zeros, their jabs, all the rest of the stuff that they're pushing on us. Then we've got the communists, who are getting more and more power. And if you get a Keir Starmer government, you're not going to get Tony Blair. Tony Blair was bad. Tony Blair did a lot to destroy this country. Keir Starmer will finish the job. Keir Starmer and his Marxist momentum mates will destroy this country with their policies. And this one policy that I'm convinced will happen if the Labour Party get in. The Labour Party have got a problem at the minute, and the problem is Keir Starmer supports the war in Israel. His wife, I believe, is Jewish. He rightly supports the war in Israel. The Muslim members of the party are very restive, to say the very least. And they're talking about standing candidates against Labour candidates to undermine the Labour vote. and basically make sure there isn't a massive Labour majority. So they're doing that for a very specific reason, because if they do that and they're successful in doing that, and they could well be successful in doing that, they will put any political party, not just Labour, in a position where they have to go cap in hand to these Muslim community leaders to beg them for the vote. And no doubt sooner or later the war in Israel will grind to a halt. Either Israel will win quickly, or they'll be forced into a quagmire, and eventually political pressure from inside and outside will mean that they have to stop doing what they should do and destroying Hamas. Once that happens, the only leverage that the Labour Party has got to get those Muslim voters back on side is to pass the Islamophobia, what's it called? The all-party definition of Islamophobia. They pass that into law. That means if you criticise what's perceived to be Muslimness, whatever that word means, it's another ridiculous made-up word, like Islamophobia is a ridiculous made-up word. I can understand people being scared of Islam. I'm not scared of Islam. I just don't like it. There's a difference. That's not me. If I had Islam, people talk about Tommy Robinson being an Islamophobe, Douglas Murray being an Islamophobe, me being an Islamophobe. If we were Islamophobic, we wouldn't do what we do, because it means we'd be too scared to do it. The real Islamophobes are the ones that haven't got the bollocks to stand up and say what's happening. So, if this gets passed into law, this all-party definition of Islamophobia in the new year, that is a blasphemy law by default. But it's even worse than that. If you criticise any facet of Islam, you'll be liable for prosecution and censure. That is how dangerous it is. It'll close down debate. People won't be able to talk about it. And at the minute, there is nothing else that we should be talking about at the minute, other than the Islamization of the UK. What we are seeing with these marches on the streets, and what will come out of those marches, a radicalized, politicized Islam that's even worse than anything we've had before. What we are seeing should terrify people into talking about it. And so many people I know are waking up to it. And we'll see what happens in the new year. The Friends of Alaska, I think it's what they're called, Friends of Alaska, have called for a massive march on the 13th of January. We'll see what happens then, how many people they get out, but I'm sure they'll have a massive turnout. So, the new year, we've got choppy waters ahead. Censorship is going to get worse. The Islamization of the UK is going to get worse, because people talk about migration, and people are worried about migration, quite rightly so. But the biggest problem with all this, the biggest problem when it comes to migration, is Islamic immigration into the country. And I don't mean that, I'm not saying that I hate Muslims and I don't want any Muslims in the country. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, if we have mass Muslim immigration, amongst those masses of Muslims that are coming into the country, you are going to get terrorists. You're going to get people who are radicalized. You're going to get people who are dangerous. And the percentages of people who want Sharia law in places like Afghanistan, Sudan, Iraq, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, the percentage of people in those areas who are actually already radicalized is off the chart. So you throw that into the mix of the homegrown, radicalized, settled Muslim communities in the United Kingdom, it's a time bomb waiting to go off. And it also is going to absolutely destroy community cohesion. So I'm not saying that because I hate anybody. I'm saying that because it's not good for our country. And of course, we don't have this with Buddhists. You don't see Buddhist suicide bombers. You don't see Hindu suicide bombers. You saw a few Tamil suicide bombers in Sri Lanka in the 80s or 90s or whenever their civil war was. Excuse me. But on the whole, you don't see it. So immigration is going to continue to be a big problem. Free speech is going to be continue to be a big problem. So what do we do? And I'm going to finish this off before I start choking. What we do, we form networks throughout the country that are independent of social media. And everyone's doing it organically to a certain extent, but we keep doing it. We keep forming networks. We keep getting in touch with people. We keep finding the good people, the good like-minded people that we can talk to, and we get in touch with them and we bring them on board. And I'm going to put a link in the description below the video to a website that I've had for a few years. I've never really done anything with it, but it's got a sign-up form. If you agree with what I'm saying and you think I'm right, you think my analysis is right, give me your email address. I'll add you to the mailing list. It's purely and simply for keeping you up to date with what's happening around the country within our movement and how we can actually build a network that's resilient enough to prevent some of these monstrous things happening that could well happen. There's going to be an election next year as well, no doubt. It looks like Crazy Keir is going to get in with all his communist kids. That's not going to be good. It's not going to be good for the UK, but it's almost certainly going to happen. So we need to be ready. We need to be ready to lose free speech. We need to be ready for being dragged back into the orbit of the European Union. We need to be ready for all sorts of compromises with all sorts of evil. And what we're in now, it's a guy, good guy. I don't think he's a believer, but he sent me a Bible verse. And it was, I think I've mentioned it before, and it said, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And he wasn't the only person that sent me it. I've had that verse in the past, since I've been doing this movement several times. And that's another story for another day, but we are in a battle between good and evil. That's the point. And I believe that good will eventually prevail. But look what happened in the Second World War. There was a lot of bloodshed, a lot of good people died so that good would prevail. I hope that doesn't happen in the West, but I don't like the way things are going. I'm extremely worried. And I think we need to gather together, talk about these things and work out a plan of how we can save our country from disaster. Have a good new year. See you all in 2024. I'll see you all next time I'm over in London or Birmingham or Manchester or wherever it's going to be next. And we're going to save our country, but it's going to be a battle. And we need to stiffen our backs and we need to stand up straight and we need to put our chests out and be brave, because there are very, very dangerous days ahead for our nation. But don't be afraid. Don't fear Islam. Don't fear communism. Don't fear the government. Don't fear the people that would persecute you. Stand strong and we will get our victory. But there's going to be a price that we all have to pay. Have a good 2024. See you all soon.